Hi everyone. So I wanted to talk today about Dark Night of the Soul because I've been through it myself, and I know many people in the group have been through it as well. And there are some people who are going through it right now. So Dark Night of the Soul could be seen or could be described as soul loss. It can also be described as existential or spiritual crisis, a spiritual depression or angst, which can also present as something like neurosis. It's in terms of how it comes about, it can come about spontaneously. It can come about because of some unexpected, chaotic situation that's happened. Maybe a loss of job, maybe bereavement. I don't know, it depends. If there's something which is always like a surefire thing that suddenly has gone, it can lead to feelings of insecurity. In terms of like tarot, we could talk about the Tower card. So it's this kind of like sudden destruction and chaos, and the realization that castles built on shifting sands, that sort of thing. So in terms of how it starts, it can either happen spontaneously. It can also be triggered by some energy work. And I will say this because my own Dark Night of the Soul happened during my first Reiki attunement, and it also led to Kundalini awakening also. So it can happen because of it can be triggered by energy shifts. And it can also be triggered by the revelations discovered through shadow work. And from what I've gathered from other people is that there are various different levels and degrees to which people suffer through Dark Night. Generally, it's quite a nasty one, if I'm really honest with you. But there's a purpose for everything. And when I consider my own Dark Night of the Soul, that lasted about a year and a half, when I think back to the main one, not everyone's last as long as that. But when I remember my own, I know that it was very, very difficult, but I can also see how much I've grown since then, and that I absolutely needed that time. What I didn't have back then was any guidance. I didn't have someone to say, okay, you're going through Dark Night of the Soul, this is what you need to do. And it's actually very simple what you need to do. But first of all, I'll just let you know what Dark Night of the Soul really feels like, so that you can decide whether or not you've had it or not. So it can feel like depression, sadness, melancholy, a darkening of mood, a loss of energy, loss of libido. The person may want to be alone a lot. So it's everything that you would think a depression might feel like. But this is more of a kind of a spiritual and soul loss type. This is more about feeling like, where am I in the world? What is my purpose? What have I been doing so far? It really is the first stage of the alchemical process, the nigredo, the blackening. It's the cornerstone. It's the kind of it's the building block on which any kind of self-realization can happen. It's absolutely necessary, and it is a very difficult process. But what's really happening when you have Dark Night of the Soul is that your unconscious is trying to talk to you through symbols. And so this might be a time where you might have heightened sort of dream life, that the symbols in your dreams and your visions and your fantasies and your daydreams will become very sort of numinous. They'll become more pronounced. And what's happening when that happens, what's really happening underneath is that your unconscious is trying to speak to you. These are messages from the unconscious. And so it's your job to look at them and to learn how to express them in whatever way is comfortable for you. Now, for me, it's drawing and painting, but for some people, they might not like to do that. So it could be that you might want to draw, or sorry, might want to write, or you might want to talk. You might want to make music, you might want to go for a run. It just depends. But I think that the most important thing is that whatever you do, you have to be doing something with the intention of expressing what is happening inside your inner world, whether or not it's a feeling or a symbol or something that's happened in a dream that's left you with a certain kind of perception that you can't quite put words around. If you're what you need to do is you need to feel it. You need to go into it, you need to feel it, and then you need to try and find a way to express it in whatever way that's comfortable for you. Another way that you can do this is through meditation and through active imagination. So you can sit in meditation with your symbol. Let's just say that there is a figure in your dreams. If you're a woman, let's just say that there is a masculine figure in your dreams that you keep on seeing, and sometimes he changes face, but sometimes anyway, there's a man, and that perhaps you need to use your imagination, or you need to use your meditations to actually have a conversation with that man and find out who he is and what he's about, and why he keeps on coming up in your dreams. And you need to be really open to what comes to mind. You need to take it for whatever comes. The best thing to do with that is to write about it and to decide to really spend some time with this, because this is how you do shadow work. And Dark Night of the Soul is just the first stage. And as I said, it can be triggered by various different things. It can just be triggered by the first few questions that you ask yourself in self-reflection, which is the first stage of your shadow, of finding out about your shadow. So it can be very, it can happen at any time. It can sometimes take you unawares. Sometimes it can take you when everything is fine. Everything is fine and it should be all okay. And suddenly the task that you used to really love to do, or the job that you used to love to do, suddenly doesn't interest you anymore, or you just don't have the heart for it. I know I've been in that position myself, so I know what that's like. It's very unsettling. And so another thing that you need to do when you're going through Dark Night of the Soul is that you need to protect yourself. You need to protect your energy. One thing that can happen also, another thing is that you can be very sensitive to other people's energy when you're going through Dark Night of the Soul. I remember being able to feel people before they even got too close to me. I could feel every emotion, and it was just hideous sometimes to be able to be that sensitive to other people. It was like a very heightened state of being of empathy. Being able to feel everyone like that. So you have to protect your energy. And if you do any kind of meditation where you're working with your chakras, be sure to close them off after each sort of cleanse of chakras. Use your imagination to ensure that each one of those colors, color chakras are closed afterwards. The other thing is you need to guard your energy from people who take too much. We all have people in our lives who maybe some of them might want more from you than you might want to give sometimes, or perhaps sometimes you need to have the energy for certain people. Well, there's nothing wrong with not answering the phone or saying no. So this is a good time to flex your muscles and use your boundaries. The other thing about Dark Night of the Soul that I think is really important to remember is that it's for a reason. And ultimately, it leads to your self-actualization, your individuation. It leads you back home to who you are. But it's not pretty. Shadow work isn't pretty. So, I think it's really important that you understand that although it might be a difficult time passes, and you have to mind yourself through it. You have to make sure that you don't go too deep, too far, too quickly into your unconscious, because it can swallow you up and it can overtake you. So the ways that you ground yourself are very simple. I mean, obviously you can put your feet onto the earth, and you can ground yourself that way using your intention, using your meditation that way. The other way is that you eat heavy. Now I don't eat meat, but it depends on what you want to eat. If you don't eat meat, you can eat pasta and cheese and bread and butter and whatever, but it has to be heavy. So maybe ditch the salads for a while and eat heavy for a time. The other thing that I found that's really important, not very important, but very useful, is to watch comedy. And it sounds very simple, but what it does is it takes you away from the negative mindset that you might be swimming in, and it just reminds you of I don't know, of how life can be. And if you have a friend who is very, makes you laugh a lot, then maybe have a word with that person. I do remember that when I was doing my shadow work, and when I was in the first stages during the sort of the soul loss, the dark night of the soul, I used to put on comedy, just really because I couldn't bear the heaviness of how I felt. And so although I didn't find the comedy particularly funny, because I couldn't laugh at that time anyway, it was important that I could kind of put myself into that space. The last thing I'm going to mention here is that when you're feeling very down and you're sort of vulnerable, kind of psychologically, you're also vulnerable to psychic attack. It's a bit harder for me to kind of describe exactly what this is. I can only suggest that it's something like negative entities looking for a host, this kind of thing. And when you're very, very down, you're depressed, or you're in dark night of the soul, you're like an open target. And that's why I say about closing off your chakras, because and being very careful with energy work, and especially with who you allow to tamper with your energy. I do Reiki. I would be very careful about who I allow to do Reiki on me. I'd ensure that they are very, on board, I guess, with my own ideas about what is kind of psychologically healthy, what's sort of spiritually healthy. And I think it's really important that you do that, and be very careful about who you allow to mess around with your energy in terms of Reiki or any kind of energy work. So yeah, psychic attack can happen, and it did happen to me. It happened to me, and it was a very, very difficult time. I was kind of walking around with with a dark entity. I could feel a dark entity with me for probably about maybe 4 or 5 months before I was able to get rid. And the way that you get rid is you use plenty of sage. You smoke your house out with sage, because it just can't survive in that environment for some reason. It just can't. I've seen it. And the other thing is that you use prayer, you use affirmations, you also speak to it, and you don't ask, you tell it to leave. And you work on yourself, and you make yourself better, and you know also that dark night of the soul is a phase, and that this too shall pass, and that it's the royal road to individuation that you're walking on. And so get as much support as you can. If you don't have support in terms of people around you, you can share on the group, or you will need to speak to someone about it and share your experience. Someone that you trust is the most important thing. And I know it's not always easy to share very kind of personal things online, but sometimes it's necessary. And I think actually the group has been, so far, and I've made sure that the group is a safe place for people to share their personal experiences. And people have been very good on there in sharing and supporting other people. And there are a lot of people on the group who have done a lot of shadow work themselves, and act as real support for others. So yeah, you can do it there, or speak to someone that you know. So I just wanted to share that with everyone, my little take on Dark Night of the Soul. Take care, everyone.